May God be in my head and in my heart and in my understanding. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. Last Monday evening on June 14th, 2021, at around 11:14 p.m., lightning struck the Washington Monument. It wasn't the first time that had happened, but the pictures that were captured from that event were incredibly accurate and explicit and made the news. It made the headlines the next day, and the photographs were shown, and they really were quite something. Stories and pictures about storms tend to capture our attention. A lot of our headlines include something about a storm somewhere, and one of the first things that many of us do is if we have our smartphones with us, go to the Weather Channel and check out what our area looks like for storms. There's a storm today, twice, in the gospel reading, and also we heard about God calming a storm in the Psalm. But the gospel reading in Mark really strikes me for what happens with the disciples in that boat where Jesus is asleep. We usually refer to that story as the calming of the storm. And it appears in all three of the synoptic gospels, in Matthew and Luke, as well as in Mark, which was what we read today. And at first glance, it seems like the main point of preserving that story for the early Christians and the main point of continuing to tell it, mostly was to give evidence of the divine power of God incarnate in the human Jesus, the same divine power that has power over all of nature, over all of creation, and has since the beginning of time. And in the telling of this story, when Jesus exercises this power over the natural power of nature, it surprises the disciples. They're amazed. It says even shocked at how the winds and the waves obey his command. And somehow I'm always surprised by their shock in this story. Because it starts off with they're upset that he's sleeping through it and they want to wake him up. So don't they already get it? You know, why are they surprised when he wakes up and does what they probably wanted him to do anyway? And that is, after all, what most of us want when we get caught in a storm, whether it's a literal storm or whether it's a figurative storm, a metaphorical storm, the kinds of storms that come up in our lives emotionally, relationally, experientially. We talk about those sometimes as being caught in a storm too. So whether we're literally in the storm or whether we're figuratively in the storm, we do want God to kind of wake up and make the storm go away so that we know we'll be safe. Calm down the winds and the waves, and to bring everything back to the place where we feel good about it. Every time I read this story, I remember about actually getting caught in what for me was a very frightening storm. It was in 1973. It was not very long after Jim and I had married and moved from the flatlands of Louisiana to what we consider the mountains of Tennessee. And we'd gone on a hike. It was Jim and me and Jim's best friend, who had been the best man in our wedding, who also lived in Knoxville and was a large reason why we moved to Knoxville from Louisiana. And David and Jim and I started a hike up to Allen Caves Bluff in the Smoky Mountains. Any of you guys ever been there? Okay, well there's several different ways to get there. One way is a very steep way. And of course, that was the way we decided to go. And at one point in that steep climb, as you get to where the bluff is, and a little bit before that, at least at that time, I haven't been recently, but that time it was dirt, it was very near the edge, and there was a cable you had to hold on as you made that last part of that climb. So we had climbed up there, and we had noticed that some clouds were forming. But being young, in our early 20s, that didn't bother us. And we got up to the bluff, and we started getting a little bit of rain, and that didn't bother us too much. There was a bluff, there was a big wall of rock behind it, so we just kind of smashed up to the wall, and the storm got worse and worse and worse. Thunder like I'd never heard before. Lightning that was so bright and so pointed, it looked like it was coming right at me, trying to get me. And I could even tell that that part of the trail that was dirt was getting muddier and muddier. And David and Jim said, you know, even though this rain's heavy, we're going to need to go back down because that trail's going to wash out. And I knew up here they were right. But in here, I was having a panic attack. I was terrified. I could not move off that wall. I was slammed against that wall like this. And all I wanted was for God to stop that storm and make everything okay so that we could get down the mountain and be safe. Probably I even prayed for it. Though I'm not even sure I wasn't so panicked that, that I couldn't actually consciously pray, but I'm sure somewhere in me was praying for God to do just that. But it didn't happen. The storm kept getting worse and worse. The trail kept washing away more and more. I remembered how steep it was, and I could not move off the wall. And Jim and David were both trying to coax me off the wall. Neither one of them was having any luck. And I think they were probably getting a little more frustrated too, but at that point I didn't even care. I just couldn't get off the wall. And then I looked up, and from the other steep part of the trail that was on the other side that went on up, and if you followed it, it goes all the way to the Cont, at least again it did then. I see this old woman with a walking stick all by herself, walking down from as far as I can see up that trail. And as she got closer and closer, I realized that she had a ranger uniform on, or at least what looked like a ranger uniform to me. And she was taking her time, but she was just walking down that trail. And I thought she was so old. I look at it now, and she probably wasn't any older than I am now, and I don't consider myself that old now, but she seemed old to me then when I was 23. And here she came. And we watched her progress, we watched her come by, I watched her get on level with where I was. She turned to us and kind of did something like that, didn't say anything, just continued to walk by and walked down and was still kind of in sight. And David said to me, he said, Gayle, if she can do it, you can do it. And I looked and I could see her, and I thought, I can do it if we go while I can still see her. And I got off the wall. And we carefully made our way down. It was very slippery. The trail was washing away. It was very muddy. I was scared to death. But somehow, as long as I could see her, I felt like it was going to be all right. And obviously it was. We got down to the bottom of the trail, and the storm continued to rage on. But all was well. All was made well. I remember that very vividly. And in my life, not only when I've been caught again in little storms, but more often when I've been caught in the figurative storms of life, the times when somebody I love dearly dies, the time when I have to make a move or a change in my life and don't want to get off the wall, the times when the kids have left home, even though I'm glad that they're off and doing their thing, the emptiness in the house as they would leave, or leave again after they came back from the visits. A lot of those have felt like storms in my life. And that image always comes back to me. Because the lesson I learned that day was this: even when Jesus does not calm the storm we find ourselves in, even when the lightning continues and the thunder and the waves and everything else, even when Jesus does not calm the storm, whether literally or metaphorically, Jesus still has the power to calm us, to say to us, peace. To say to us, be still, not meaning don't move off the wall, but be still and hear. Sometimes I think maybe that story really should be called, not the calming of the storm, but the calming of the disciples. Because it has made more sense to me in those situations. Don't panic. Don't panic. It may not be exactly what you want me to do, but I will send someone to lead you down to the mountain, to lead you through the storm and down the trail to a better place. May we come to see that it is already so. Amen.
Amen.